Welcome to episode 4 of the 1988 Honda CR500 build. In the first 3 episodes, I picked the bike up down in Arizona, brought it back to Montana, tore it to the frame, disassembled the engine, did a lot of planning and ordering parts, restored the fuel tank, and tried to come up with new steering stops for the updated front end, which, don't worry, I will be addressing and improving. Thank you for all of your feedback on that. You guys are seriously incredibly helpful. And with all of that, I have barely cracked the surface. So I will begin today by disassembling the transmission. This is not only for a full inspection, but to send out to Millennium Technologies for micro-polishing. Micro-polishing is a process that results in benefits of reduced friction, increased durability, increased lubrication, and a mirror-like finish. Now, while I was disassembling this transmission, the engine cases were soaking in the sink. Oh crap, I forgot about the sink. So I had a screw up. I was letting the sink fill, and I was in the garage, and this thing has no overflow, and I forgot about it. And it overflowed, but I think I caught it pretty quick. But go down to my crawl space. We're leaking pretty good from a couple spots. I think it was like maybe just a couple minutes. I started blasting the heat in the house because some of it was going into a floor vent. We've got a pretty sustained drizzle right there. With that little mishap taken care of, at least I hope, here are the parts going out to Millennium. The cylinder is getting sent out with a brand new Pro X piston to be re-sleeved to the perfect spec. And the bottom of this cylinder, where someone had previously gouged it with a screwdriver, will be repaired. The cases are going out to repair the same corresponding mating surface that was also damaged with a screwdriver. The crankshaft was soaking in a nasty coolant oil bath for who knows how many years, so for peace of mind, it is also getting a brand new Pro X rod and bearing and will be balanced to perfection by the talented crew at Millennium. And finally, as mentioned, the transmission. I think the transmission shows fairly limited signs of wear, with a couple spots where there are small bits missing from dogs or slightly rounded edges on dogs. Now, I'm not a transmission expert by any means, so we will see if Millennium has anything different to say, but currently I believe each gear is safe to run and this transmission should shift smoothly. With the transmission goes the shift forks and shift drum for micro-polishing. The transmission circlips will indeed be replaced, as it is very difficult to get them off of the shafts without some bending and damage. I took the time to set up these nice little cardboard outlines of each shaft and took photos so that when I get these parts back, reassembly will be easy. I found the number of teeth and the thrust washer specs simply by looking at the parts diagram on RockyMountainATVMC.com. I am very grateful that Millennium Technologies exists, as while I am able to do a lot in this little garage, there are some tasks best left to the experts with decades of experience and all of the right tools for the job. If you are in need of cylinder or other engine services, be sure to reach out to Millennium. Oh, who would have thought that a bunch of engine components are really heavy? I'm always curious what companies think of my Gorilla Tape pack jobs, but I have a reasonable level of confidence this will get to Wisconsin safely. I was halfway through Gorilla Taping this thing shut when I realized I forgot my packing list, so I taped it to the outside. While I know I'm just sending a package out, this actually feels like a pretty big milestone for this build, because when this box comes back, I'll be ready to get started on the engine build. So, let's see what we can knock out in the meantime. For this CR500 build, I will be assembling an entirely new front wheel with an Excel rim, components from Tusk and SKF, in a used but great condition front hub from MX Locker. This is due to the fact that the bike is getting a whole new front end, and to my understanding from the research I've done, that OEM front wheel will not work. Now, as for the rear wheel, I intend to reuse the rear hub with the addition of a brand new gold rim from Excel. From what I've researched, I believe the 1988 CR500 rear wheel had a 2-year only hub, which means parts availability is somewhat limited. As for the spokes, I want to try to save them. They are available on back order from Rocky Mountain for $381 a piece or $137 for the set, but this one is about more than just money. It's about trying to salvage as many usable parts as I can from this CR500. I usually disassemble old wheels when I'm keeping the hubs by cutting the spokes with bolt cutters. This time I will actually be attempting to disassemble the wheel. I'm definitely nervous to see how seized up these 37-year-old spoke nipples are. If they're anything like this rock hard old ass tire, it's gonna be a task. Oh, there she is. Come on. Come on.
hours later.
Tire finally off. It is definitely a good thing I wasn't planning on saving these rims because they are toast and absolutely falling apart. For rotor and sprocket bolts in general, heat is your friend, and especially when they haven't been touched in many, many years. The rotor bolts were pretty easy, while the sprocket bolts wanted a little extra time with the torch, but still weren't too bad. There were a couple nuts that gave me a hard time, but I just did another pass with the torch and then they were able to break free. I can now begin attempting to remove spokes, and what do you know? They spin freely. Just kidding, they are all totally seized up. This is where PB Blaster and my favorite thing ever, a little patience, comes into play. I squirted the spoke nipples with PB Blaster and waited. But I don't really like to sit around while I wait. How about handling this crusty old seat in the meantime? After removing the seat cover and pulling that slightly moldy old seat foam off, a seat base was revealed that is usable but needed some love and some repairs in a couple areas. Since my TIG welding skills are pretty garbage so far, maybe it's time I practice on something a little easier. I'll try my hand at plastic welding. While those spoke nipples soaked in PB Blaster and the seat base soaked in the sink that I remembered to turn off, I headed to Harbor Freight. The seemingly daily pilgrimage got some new things. Now, I have never done this before, but I think it went relatively okay, so if you are an expert plastic welder, feel free to roast me in the comments. I spent some time melting new material into all of the holes, gaps, and cracks, and once I was content with the coverage, I ground them down with the Dremel and was fairly pleased with the result. My dumbass forgot to get an after shot before installing the seat cover, so I will show you the result in a minute. I found on a Vital MX forum that this 3M Super 77 is good for adhering seat foam, so I sprayed down the seat base and new foam and began installing. It was slightly more difficult than I anticipated to line it up square, but I got it done. Now onto the seat cover. I found this cover on eBay and it was by far the trickiest seat cover installation I've done. Not only does this CR500 seat have an absurd bend, so I wasn't sure how tight to pull the cover front to back compared to a modern seat, and this cover is super thin vinyl. On a nice, thick, decal work seat cover, I can kind of make as many mistakes as I want and keep pulling staples and trying again, but pulling staples on this one would put sizable holes in the material to where it really could only be stapled so many times. I finally ended up getting it, and I'm not gonna lie, I was real close to needing a new seat cover. I screwed up at the front and the cover started separating, but I was able to blast enough staples into reliable areas of the cover that I think this thing has plenty of support and should be solid. I've given it quite a few tugs and have tried to stress it around the edges and nothing is moving. I did have one small plastic blowout when stapling. It was that cracked area on the rear, and it wasn't just my plastic weld, but the seat base itself was brittle and couldn't handle the power of the Harbor Freight stapler. By that point, the cover was on and not a ton I could do about it given everything I just said, so that is one imperfection. My only concern right now is if the seat requires any bend when actually installed on the bike and pressed against the tank, as it creates these wrinkles when bent. Overall, I think it looks damn good. I realized I could indeed test if the seat would wrinkle, and I needed to know if I should get another seat cover ordered, as this one would not be able to be removed and reinstalled again. I reattached the subframe and installed the fuel tank, and then came the moment of truth. I was thrilled to find that the seat actually needs to be pressed down in the back and ultimately stretch the cover even tighter to install, making the potential for wrinkles a non-issue. Oh, and here are those ground down plastic welds. Now back to the rear wheel. After soaking in PB Blaster, I first tried seeing which nipples would loosen with no additional aid. I was able to remove exactly 10. Some of these did have help from the vice grips by holding two spokes together to prevent them from spinning. I used as minimal clamping force as I could to try not to damage the spokes. I then tried the remainder of the spokes with additional help from the torch and got 6 more. So that is exactly 16 spoke nipples removed. I don't know if I should be excited that I'm halfway done or nervous that the remaining 16 are getting progressively more difficult. I let all of the remaining spoke nipples soak in PB Blaster overnight, and when I returned, I found a method that got me another 5. I used the map gas torch for exactly 30 seconds per spoke nipple. There would come a point where too much heat would destroy these nipples, and I'm not sure where that point is. That said, 30 seconds seemed to be the sweet spot where I could then hit the nipple with an impact and break it loose. That came at a cost, as for quite a few, this resulted in stripped heads. I don't intend to reuse the nipples anyway, as many of them are rotting and falling apart, but I hope to find the appropriate size nipples to fit the spokes. So I just counted spoke nipples, and I have 23 removed, and I was like, sick, only 9 more to go, we're on the home stretch. And then I counted them on the wheel, and there are 13 more to go. I don't know why in my head I thought this was a 32-hole rim. It is a 36. About half of the remaining ones are already stripped out on the backside, so... After a significant amount of effort on the remaining spokes, I had 6 stripped heads and 4 spokes that simply wouldn't budge. I had gouges and indents in those spokes from trying to hold them with the vice grips and ultimately fell short. Might it be possible with enough persistence? Maybe. But ultimately, I decided I gave it as much time and effort as I was willing and submitted the order on Rocky Mountain. I debated ordering less than 36, but then we're dealing with zinc plating the old ones, and would they match? And if they don't, do you send the new ones out to plate so they match? And ultimately, it made more sense to spend the $137 for a totally new set. But I tried, and if you were trying to disassemble a wheel that is, less than 37 years old, the methods I showed are pretty darn likely to work for you. This meant as much as it pained me to come up short after all that effort, I could bust out the old bolt cutters for the final 10 spokes. This left me with a rear hub that needs to be further disassembled, and behind the seal revealed a retaining ring I've never seen before. I tried to break it loose, and then I tried adding heat before trying again, and nothing. I found that Rocky Mountain offers a tool for $15 that seems well worth it here, as I believe the ring is reusable if I don't mangle it with a punch, and the rings cost more than $15 anyway. From there, I spent the afternoon sorting, organizing, adding more items to my cart, and trying to maintain a good structure and plan for the long list of tasks yet to be done. So at this point, I need to decide what color to do these hubs. I'm kind of torn between black, a dark gray, and a titanium, like some of those colors that I used on the RM125. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will get the appropriate Cerakote colors ordered. Now, I realize this hasn't been the most extensive episode. I am just plucking away on this build one step at a time. Truth be told, since episode 3, I've been focused on wrapping up the RM125. That giveaway ends in 2 weeks. I have been dialing in my new Yamaha as some cross-country races approach, and I've been working on the Panthera snow bike project in hopes that that thing will see snow before it all melts this year. And along with all that, I am learning to weld in hopes that I can do some of the welding tasks for this project on my own. It's definitely a tall task, and I feel like there's never enough time in the week, but I'm doing my absolute best. So I hope to make the future episodes a little more involved than this one, but I've been getting comments of people asking, where is episode 4? I didn't want to leave you guys hanging. This is where I'm at. This is the progress I've made. Remember, the goal is to finish this build by August, when one of you will win it. If you would like to get entered to win, you can do so over on my website, but if you want to wait until you see further progress on this build, I don't blame you. As for the RM125, that build is done, that bike rips, and someone will win that one in 2 weeks. As always, all the links are down below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys soon.